Mem Zayin. These are from the more difficult halachas. We had a choice of either learning Taf Mem Zayin or Taf Samach Zayin, and I was looking them both over, trying to figure out which one is harder.
I opened that Taf Mem Zayin, so
Taf Mem Beis is also hard. Okay, those are the three probably: Taf Mem Beis, Taf Mem Zayin, and Taf Samach Zayin. Those are the. But this, I think, is the most. I don't know how much we'll get through it, but the subject is probably very important. Dinei Taruvus Chometz B'Soich Pesach. Okay, and now this halacha is very simple. In Kol HaTorah Kula, generally things are batel b'shishim, batel b'roiv. On Pesach, there's no such thing. It doesn't make a difference if it's min b'minoi, min b'sheino minoi. Just have one drop, and it's no good. Now, just going to say over, I said in a shir on Hilchos Pesach today, I said a Chuvas Ridvaz, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Chele Gimel, Tuf Nun Zayin, that the Ridvaz says, we don't find anywheres in the Torah such restrictions and complications as you do in Chometz Pesach. And it's by far disproportionate. And there has to be some reason why Pesach we're so makbid on Pesach. And he answers with what I call a cop-out. He answers with a medrash. And he brings midrashim that say something which we're familiar with from the Arizal, that Chometz is like the Yetzer Hara, and just one little bit of Yetzer Hara is something like Chizbalah. You don't have to leave a lot of them for it to grow into something very big very quickly. Okay? So I don't know what we'd say next year or last year, but yeah, but that's the Yetzer Hara is like Chometz, and therefore you have to be machatit achrov and get rid of it. Even the smallest amount is equal to the biggest amount. Okay? This is a very important concept, and therefore Taruvis is very chomer. Now,
that's the real answer. The Rav said that's a cop-out. So that means that there was
no, that's there are answers, technical answers to the question, but this is the answer. This is the, if you want to call, the back office answer. Okay. Chometz Pesach oiser taruvasai ben b'minu ben shaloi b'minu b'mashu. Even in a mashu. Va'afilu b'hano. Not only are you not allowed to eat it, you're not allowed to sell it, you're not allowed to give it to your animal to eat, you can't derive from it any hano. I'm going to right now share with you a shtickle Torah from my uncle. One of the big questions that when I was young, I knew that there were some Hasidim that were makbid on this. I came to Yerushalayim, I found out the Yerushalayim Minig is they makbid on this. People don't drink water from the faucet on Pesach. Now, people maybe here in Ramat Shemesh, people don't drink water from the faucet all year, but that's for a totally different reason. They won't cook with water that comes from the berries. And the reason for this is, there's this place called the Kinneret. And people fish in the Kinneret, and there are many people who fish that use Chometz as bait. And if that Chometz goes into the Kinneret, then all of the water in the Kinneret is mixed with Chometz, and that qualifies for a Mashahu, right? And therefore, all the water which we drink, which comes from the Kinneret, is non-usable.
Okay. That was true then.
What?
That was true then.
Okay, now it comes from the ocean, and the ocean.
It comes from aquifers.
And the ocean also, there's Chometz.
Right. So, it's not,
1 in 2.
Yeah, the millions of miles of shore that there are.
How long does it take from the water in the Kinneret to get to your faucet?
I have no idea. But from the desalination, it's 6 hours.
But the salinated water is
6 hours from when it's taken out of the ocean until it's coming out of your tap.
Water, just a steam.
What?
The desalinated water is water that's seawater that's boiled, and they collect the steam. So I'm not sure if the molecules of carbon.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know if that would make it any better or not, because that depends on other halachas. But I'm not going to get involved in that. This is the reason why there are people who don't eat water, and I'll just tell you, it's not such an expensive chumrah. You know, we're not talking about what you wash your dishes with, not the one you flush down the toilet. You know,
Just drinking.
what? Okay, but this is only a chumrah, so they're not. Okay, now
We have a multi-part filter on the water that we use.
I don't think that's going to help. I'll just share with you. I have an uncle who published a fascinating piece of Torah on this question, and he says the question doesn't start, and he bases it on a Gemara in Avodah Zarah. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah says that a person cannot make any karka Avodah Zarah and Asur B'Hana. It's not chal on karka. You know, Eloheim v'lo Yaharim. It's learned out of a pasuk, okay? And therefore he says all waters that are in their natural habitat, I don't know what you want to call it exactly, as long as the water wasn't drawn out of the Kinneret, so it can, even if it has Chometz in it, it can't have the Chumris of Asur B'Hana. Why?
Why can there just the rest not?
No, not the rest, not. The rest also. But if I have water that's what's not called in the karka, it's called tolush. You know, it's
collected in a container.
Right. Anything which is collected in a container, so that's not called the karka. It's not called part of Mother Earth. Anything which is part of Mother Earth, right, one cannot aser it b'hana. It's not. It's so therefore, since you put it into Mother Earth, it can't become aser b'hana. And he has a 5-page piece on this to prove that this is true, and therefore you could drink the water. Okay? I know I'm not getting involved. There are many other reasons of those who are makpid, no. But those who are not makpid, I'll just tell you, Rabbi Avrohom has a tshuva on this, and he says something which is amazing. This is as I call a rabbinical statement. Even a mashu has a shir. Okay? Now I'll just tell you, I'll tell you 2 places where I've bumped into that exact same statement. There's a famous story about Rabbi Shulei Diskin, who was a classmate of Rabbi Avrohom in Cheder. They learned together in Cheder. And he came home once and saw his wife scrubbing the dishes before Pesach. So he said to her, "What are you doing?" So she says, "Cleaning to make sure that there's no mashu there." So he looks at the kli and said, "It's good enough." So she looks at her husband. She said, "There's the Rav Yerushalayim," and she asks a very simple question: "How much is a mashu?" And he says, "A drop more than nothing." So she went back to scrubbing her dishes, right? It didn't help. But no, that's also the same idea that even a mashu has it. Now I'll just tell you, those are stories from 100 years ago. About 40 years ago, I used to learn B'chavrusa with Rav Nosson Kopshitz. For a few years, good few years, we learned B'chavrusa. And before Pesach, he was in charge, he lived at that time in Makor Baruch, and he was in charge to paskin on the shilas of kalim that had to be kashered if they were clean enough to be kashered. So the subject of a mashu who was very nageya. And I saw him many times say, that's not a mashu, okay? So if you want to know if I have shimush on the mashu, okay?
Why would that be? That's before Pesach. Why would that
Right.
be
No, but how much is a mashu?
before Pesach, what's the touching? What's the difference in mashu?
Before Pesach, it's not.
No, that happens to not be true. When a person kashers, this is just since we're If you take a look in Tuf Nun Beis, if I'm not mistaken, you will find this halacha that when a person kosher something, it has to be 100% clean.
It's only true if you use it before Pesach.
Notice whenever something is being koshered. The halacha is fly al gabi kli. Let's see if we could find it. I think it's Sif Yud. Aleph. Maducha. We're getting close. Gilu Ayadas. Acharif Tashmisha, no. Klish. Here, Yud Gimel. Klish yesh bo tlai. Im kodam hatlai leblias ha'isser, ein tzarich la'asiroi. If the patch came before the blias isser was there, you don't have to take it off. Why? Because the kibola kachpolta is it just went in and it will come out. Vim kodma blias isser litlai, tzarich lahasar atlai kodam agola. O yosem gachol b'makom atlai, until you burn it off. Okay. Where does he say it? Someplace over here it says this idea that you have to clean it 100%. 1 second. Okay, 1 second. It's Machlekes Rishonim, Machlekes the Rosh and the Ramban, if I'm not mistaken, what the reason is. Okay? But that's halacha Hilchos Agala. We'll find a few. Maybe we'll find a few by Shabbos. I'll find a few. Not during this class. All right. And that the reason for that is it has to be 100% clean. I'll just tell you, Rav Moshe Feinstein has a tshuva in Yeridei Chelek Aleph, a fascinating tshuva where he speaks about koshering in a factory where it's impossible to inspect all the pipes. You know, the pipes go, there are miles of pipes inside a factory, and they pour boiling hot water through the pipes, but is it clean? Okay, so he has a tshuva about that, and he's Mekel. What?
They usually put a program in there also.
That doesn't take care of this problem. That has to be perfectly clean. Doesn't take care of, and he has a whole shtickle Torah why you can get around that problem. Okay. Anyways, okay. Let's get back to where we are over here. So that's okay. So this is halacha that it's not batal and it's aser b'hano. V'tzorach liftzreif hakol. You have to burn the whole thing. V'loisagi bepidyon d'mei chometz, and take out whatever it costs the chometz is worth and throw that into the garbage. V'limkar hashar. You can't do that. Miu kelim, and this is a fascinating halacha. Kelim shenizbashlu bahem. If you cooked with chometz, kelim, mutarim achar pesach, ve'ein tzrichim shvira o agola. You made hamburgers that have breadcrumbs in them. You can use that pot after Pesach for Chometz without doing anything to it.
You use it on Pesach, right?
You used it on Pesach and you made it with breadcrumbs. After Pesach, we hope by mistake, yeah? Okay? After Pesach you could use it without any... Well, there are, but we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to read, there's a Mishnah Berurah over here. What? There's something like that, but we'll see in a minute. There's a Mishnah Berurah over here which I have great difficulty with. Okay, now we're going to see the Mishnah Berurah on this sif, because there are, there's the title and then there's the pratim. The pratim are much different than the title, because there are all kinds of heterim which we, when things happen b'diavad, that we put them together to create heterim. Okay, midaraisa havi chometz kishar isum shenes arvo she'enu oisin tarvasan ela kedei litein tam betarubas dahainu ad shishim. Really, it should be batal b'shishim. Ela shechachamim yichmiru boy. Why? Kivan the isbei karas. That's one reason. Second reason, v'loi bedili minei kuli shaita. People a whole year eat chometz, so you have you can't be, how bad could it be? I'll just share with you a fascinating story. I was in Borough Park about 20 years ago, and a friend of mine from Yeshiva's house, and I look on the oven, and on top of the oven there's a piece of dough. And I say to him, what's that piece of dough? He said, that's the challah, So I said, that's my cholos asuris, you can't have it here. She says, it's just the challah that my wife took off. I said, right, it's macholas asuris, and you can't have it here, and it's being nivla into the ta'anur, and this is a very bad thing, what you're doing. He says, you're out of your mind. So basically I said, so go and ask your rabbi. And that took care of him. But just, no, in other words, why does that happen? Because you have this challah in your house all the time, so you don't think of it as something which is chaz or treif. That dough is as treif as a piece of meat that wasn't salted. That's how treif it is. Okay?
Real challah, or the real shear of two...
Yeah, the real shear. Today it's only the Rabbanon.
That was in the Chutzlar too.
Right? But it doesn't make a difference. Both it's the Rabbanon, and your meat that wasn't salted is usually, it's the food we don't usually eat fowl or meat that isn't cooked. So dam shabishlu is also only the Rabbanon. Okay? So, all right. Anyways, so you have the second reason people are not badili minei. I'm just giving you an example. That was an example. What does it mean, la badili minei? V'yesh amrim mishum david davar sheyesh lo matirim. Being that after Pesach, the Chometz is going to be mutter, so we don't rely on bittul for something. Right? The people who learn Beitza know what I'm talking about. Okay. Now it's also b'mashahu. V'hechadika oid habeit tznadim lahakil. When you have other reasons to be mekel, samchinan ashiltis, we're samach on the shiltis, the svirlei, the Chometz Pesach shavel shari surim, the b'shishim. It's matul b'shishim. Okay, so we have already a machlekes rishonim. If this whole thing of Chometz U'Marshu is the real deal, okay, and when you'll have a suffix or you have other tznadim, will be mekel, and this
is only on a mashu. Meaning, if it's more than a mashu, then he
shari surim.
Then it's like
okay. Lafuki das apotis show the sagish yachlish the mea chometz the tiyam v'achakach muter limkor oliten la'akum kamashulon dolakaimo kain alochi v'da. And here we go again, another kula. The achroidim kosud v'mokum hafsid gadol ma'od ein tzarich lisref hakol ela yimkor kula l'nochri chutz midmei iser shaboy. You could sell it to the Nachri except for the value of the Issa that's in there. The Kivan she'eino lokech damim ba'ad ha'issam uravoy. Em kain eino nena. He's not nena. V'hu kedas ha'mechaber tov samach zayin. V'ayin shon siftef Mishnah Berurah. Le'inyan is'arav ma'at mi'oisa kedera she'nes ha'b'mashu l'tech kedera acheres. If you say isha mashu pamayim. We're not going to get involved in that. I don't think we're going to make it that far. Okay? Now, the Kalim shenes bashul bahem afilu bishul bahem b'Pesach atzmo chometz she Yisrael harbe v'nivlu bahem. They really got full of chometz. Afilu achim mutar nachar Pesach. Why? Sha'oz kvar einu b'nei yomo. After Pesach, they're already not going to be a ben yomo. V'lo shayach lemigzah hacha atu ben yomo. And you can't make a gezerah atu ben yomo. The oz hakol mutar. Because after Pesach, it's all mutter. You have to make sure that there's nothing there. Okay, Blias, you don't have an Isra Bayira Bayimatzah. I have a world-class question on this, Mishnah Berurah, and I don't have an answer. What would happen if I cooked the last hour of Pesach Chometz in my pot? Okay. It comes Matzah Pesach. I call the Rav and I say, could I use my pot now? So say for sure.
You clean it.
What? Right, that's the question, right? So this halacha, you need to have me'es le'es. Okay, at least you have to have a whole night. I'm not going to get involved in the halacha, so I don't know exactly how this works out. I didn't have a chance to research it, but I learned this Mishnah Berurah. It just doesn't make sense. It's missing some explanation. All right, now here we're going to go. Continue the mechaber. B'din tarubas or b'din shar tarubas. Masha also b'shar tarubas b'pachas b'shishim also b'chametz b'mashu. Okay, here you need a mashu. Avo in b'shar tarubas lo yatzorach shishim ela klipa or netilas makom. Sometimes you have things that something touched something else that it only goes in a klipa or netilas makom, which is about an inch. Af b'chametz came because it doesn't go in further because the Isser is more chomer. You understand? All that it does is that if it's mixed in, you could say that we're aser in a lesser percentage. But if you have, it's not going to go in further. If the two things that are hot, it's enough just to take off the thickness of a onion skin. Kisharisum v'chein im noga kikar chometz v'kikar matzah shneim chamim ve'ein sham davar hamefatman le'oser ela magoy bilvad. Okay, and I just want to share with you, I was about 2 weeks ago on Sunday, I baked machine matzahs, and my job in that chabura is I stand as the matzahs go into the oven after they're cut, and my job is to see if there are any matzahs that are touching each other, or there's anything that fell onto it, or they flipped over, part of it flipped over, and to knock them off the line. That's my job. There are four rows of matzahs, and I stand on one side. I'm in charge of two, and there's a guy on the other side that he's in charge of the other two. And they've been doing this together for years. And there's all kinds of shilas that happen. And it's very often that the two matzahs touch. Okay? Now, from the problems that there are, how much does that aser in the matzah? What did we just learn? Just kedei klipa. Okay? But what about the place on the oven where the matzah was sitting? You have to kasher that place.
You get singed in the oven?
So I just tell you, there are this has to do with production and halacha. I'm not going to get involved in the way, but when I was involved in this much more seriously many years ago, they would have the chain, the matzahs go on a chain, but it's not a belt. It's a chain. It's a chain, but it's made out of metal, because if we have it out of rubber, it would only go in. It would never come out. Yeah, okay. And it would go back under on top of the burners. Okay, and then people started to complain when you're koshering it, if there's anything there, what's dissipating is going to go onto the matzahs that are on top of it, right? So then it became a question, which is the best way to kosher these things, okay? Now, why am I sharing this with you? Besides that, it's interesting to realize what really goes on in real life. How serious of a question is this? Okay, well, we're not learning tough Samach Zayin, we're learning tough Mem Zayin. The Magen Avram in Siman tough Samach Zayin, if I'm not mistaken, Sifkat Nun Lamed Gimel says that whenever the halacha is that you have to take off a klipa, it's really only a chumrah. It's not Medina Mamish. And there are many poskim who go with that approach. So if you take on that approach, so nothing really happened, so the whole koshering process is not so important. So is that a reason to put the belt that it gets koshered, or it doesn't get koshered? Okay, this is just to understand the complexities of you have to figure out which is the best way to do things. Okay, we'll just leave that with this. Okay. We did Reicha Milsa. Reicha Milsa is a fascinating halacha, which says that if a person puts in the oven basar kosher and basar treif, aside from the smoke, we're afraid that the fragrance will go from one thing to the other, and that could answer it. That we're chosh with that lechatchila. What is the halacha legabi Pesach? L'yitash yesh bo chometz, yesh mekilim b'makom d'hayamuta b'shari surim, v'yesh machmirin d'mashu mi'iko, and you have to be worried about reicha. V'davka b'makom sheshayich bo reicha, ela d'b'shari surim lav milsahi, as we say in Yeridea. Okay, this is a very important idea, and just to share with you something that's worthwhile sharing with you at this point. The smell of Chometz is also on Pesach. The halacha is that you're not allowed to go by a goyish bakery on Pesach and smell the Chometz. Okay? What? Yeah. It's Hilchos Brachos. Okay, no, but you know what? That's if it's yours.
It's not your Chometz.
Right.
It's Chometz, doesn't matter.
Right? Okay, I guess we'll... I believe, Gersha, you'd probably believe me, but it's a...
It's okay. It's only why, because it's only from, it's not just from your Chometz, any Chometz.
Yeah.
So any Chometz, you're not allowed to get on.
All right, where is that? Hilchos Reach. Reach is Sivan Reich Yud Ches, something like that. Reach. Reish Tazayin. I knew it was around there. Okay. Here. Where is it?
There was a question to walk there. You don't walk the shul, you have to walk all the way towards the bakery. If you walk all the way, you have to try. Right, so you don't want to have to. Not going to take it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, I guess we'll have to find this one too. All right, we'll owe you this one too, Mr. Shem. For next week, we'll tell you where it is. Okay. All right. Let's just continue over here. Okay. Chometz shelish arev mishesho sulamayla ad halayla. So then, according to many poskim, it's already osir midaraisa to eat it, but it's not chorus. Okay. The mashu is shofar.
Eino oiser b'mashu. Okay. Eladina kashari surim. V'naisen tam levgam nami shari. Okay. So says the Mishnah Berurah. V'im irvu b'mezid, kigoin shetzach l'davar la'asos l'sachlo im chometz, kigoin muris, you want to make some fish juice, okay. Af al pi sheyesh bo shishin keneged alechem, osir v'chayv levar midivrei seifrim koydem Pesach. V'mloi bi'aroi v'over lav Pesach, yesh avim she'osir ba'ana, elam kei mochel anachi chutz midmei isser shabai. Even though if you eat after that time, you get malchus.
V'gam osir b'hano min ha-Torah. Mikol mokom, kivon de'ein chiyuv koros al hazman hahu, lo ichmiru bo chachamim l'eser b'mashu. V'cheim churma de'noisen tam levgam. Because that's like also a mashu kind of idea. Ule'inyin chometz nuksha toicha pesach. Yech machmir naos b'mashu. Avodas Rabbi Avrohom Baruch Zachariash kivon de'ein koros l'kul yam avodas habi pois kein barak yisir rabbanim batel b'shishim afilu b'toicha pesach. If you have Chometz that is what?
Spoiled?
No. Nuksha is, it means niskash, it's not spoiled, it's not in its regular Chometz form. It's not, it's like Play-Doh. What is Play-Doh? Spoiled? Play-Doh is edible and it's Chometz. Okay, but it's not food, right?
Okay. So what happens in this Chometz nuksha?
Yeah, according to many poskim.
Is this the chumrah of all of the makeups and things that have chometz in them? You're not supposed to use on Pesach?
No, I would just say that many of those things you can use them on Pesach. Maybe we'll get a little bit further involved. We'll discuss that. Okay. Okay. B'imkein afilu nisar v'lach b'lach b'atu b'shishim v'nisar v'yosh v'yosh v'lotu cha b'trei. Okay, but tzarich la'ochlo kodem Pesach. The Pesach chayz v'nir, it will become chayz v'nir. This is a fascinating halacha. This is I'm just going to share with you a story that happened with me baking matzahs about 25 years ago. I was in the matzah bakery. We weren't baking. The people before me were baking. And I see a guy measuring out the flour that he's putting into the, with the scale that they use to measure the matzahs to pack them away. So I asked him, what are you doing here? So he said, the other scale doesn't work. So I said to him, you can't weigh your flour here. You have to take the scale into the other room. So he says to me, why not? So I said, because when you weigh your flour, some flour goes into the air, and it could land on a matzah, and somebody could put their matzah in the soup, and then you're going to have chometz gomer. Right? So he said, okay. He got very nervous at that idea, and he left. And my friend was standing next to me, so he said, why can't he weigh his matzahs here? So I said, because the matzahs have to be, the flour has to be kept in a cold place. And it's not a cold place here. So he says, so why didn't you tell him that? So I said, if I would have told him that, he would have fought with me and tell me it is cold. Right? But if I tell him that you never know what could happen, that he's not going to argue with. So I told him what'll work. I didn't tell him what the real reason is. This is, what I told him is also true. Okay? What? Yeah, well, you have to know what to say to who. I'm telling it over because both are true. That's, you have to be aware. Okay. Shif Gimel. Okay. Chita shenimtzes be'erev Pesach b'tarnagoles hamuvusheles mutter levatla b'shishim. Okay, I'm just going to share with you, when I lived in Ezus Torah, Pesach night, my upstairs neighbor knocks on my door, and he says, I need you to come to my house. So I come to his house, takes me to the kitchen, he opens up the pot of chicken soup, and he says, what's that swimming there? I said, that looks to me like a kernel of wheat. So he says, I thought so too. So we went. There's a guy about 5 buildings away who actually has wheat for Mishmura Matzah. The people who do Ksiras Yad, they do it once in every 2 or 3 years, so they usually have in the house. And we got some wheat, and we put one next to the other, and it was wheat. That's what it was. So I had to give him some chicken soup for that Pesach night, and this is something that can happen. My my wife's grandfather, where they came from in Germany, they did not eat chicken a whole Pesach. Why? Because chickens, they give them to eat Chometz. And you could end up with such a story. It was very common for this to happen in Europe. You had to be extremely particular to make sure this didn't happen. Nowadays, in Eretz Yisrael, most of the shchitas, they feed them corn before Pesach. Well, but I'm telling you, they feed them corn, and this way, you're not going to find wheat in the chicken's stomach because they don't eat wheat, so then they don't get it in their stomach. Okay, that's an important idea. But anyways, if you found this, if you would have called me before Pesach, I would have told them to mevatel it b'shishim. Okay, aval im chimemo tarnagolis b'Pesach ba'od shachita b'soichoi chozers litin tam b'soichoi b'Pesach v'havi b'mashu. So that chicken soup would have to have been eaten on Erev Pesach before nightfall. Erev Pesach.
And they took out that thing before
right,
Pesach.
and now then you just have the blias. They have if they have shishim, that's fine. So then you could eat that chicken soup. But if you're going to leave it till Pesach, then it becomes chayzer veneer. That means we look at it like it got mixed in right now, and then it's not even batal b'mashu. So you have to finish it beforehand. I'll just share with you one other fascinating Tarubas Chometz question today. Somebody called me up and he said, I bought Osem Kosher LaPesach ketchup. I bought 2 bottles and I came home and I saw only one bottle had the Kosher LaPesach thing on it, the other bottle didn't. And I used it. So I asked him, are there any different ingredients? He said no. So the person who used to give the hechsher on Osem was somebody named of Charlap. He was a neighbor of mine, so I know him personally. So I called him up and I asked him, this guy, this is what happened. So he tells me, he's not a very religious guy, he's a straight halacha. Tell them not to use it on Pesach. They can put it in their freezer and save it till after Pesach, but it's not kosher Pesach. And this is something which maybe we'll get to learn a bit more about. Sometimes the tarubis is enough that you can't eat it, but you don't have to throw it out. And then we're going to, maybe we'll learn about that next time. Okay.